We get one shot, get it right, Airfarce says as the doors on the air van open on either side. The howling winds blasting through tear up a few loose wrappers that had been missed in the cleaning, and after a few rotations of slapping against everyone were whisked outside. Coming to the turn in T-minus 5 seconds, he bellows as the men brace themselves. The larger air van they're chasing takes the turn into the winding canyon. Go, go, go! Puke screams, and the rest of the soldiers pile out of the van as they slow down to take the turn, despite the wind slamming into them like a hammer. 4 men jump out of each side and race towards the canyon entrance, with large bags of gear as the air van takes off after its target. The doors remain open as Puke clips his harness into the braces installed on the ceiling. "Oh, what a day, what a lovely day," he exclaims as he syncs up a laser cannon to his cybernetic arm and eye. "Nothing like a Sunday drive to calm the nerves, eh, Puke?" Airfarce asks with an enormous grin on his face as he effortlessly weaves through the canyon at maximum speed to keep their target in sight. "Little skeet shoot on the side? Good times, Puke remarks before leaning out the side with one hand holding onto the railing installed in the custom van. He takes aim and blasts with the laser cannon. There's too much distance and too much movement to do any damage, but it lets the van ahead of them know that they have their full and undivided attention. Meanwhile, the other 8 members of the squad reach the entrance of the canyon and begin setting up cylinders welded to large plates. Wire is wrapped around an exposed copper portion of each one and led back towards Itchy to the left of the canyon as they then start piling rocks around them, leaving the tops exposed just barely, but tossing sand and grit to cut down on the shine. "Chaser, this is Mortar. Do you copy?" Bike says into the large device he had carried himself. "Copy, Mortar. This is Chaser. Initiating readout sync on my mark." "Mark," Airfarce says in response, and Bike flips a switch on the portable communication center. A screen lights up showing 3 readings. Distance to the van, distance of the target to the van, and a speed reading in meters per second. Sync is live. Readout is clear. You are traveling at 400 kilometers an hour and slowly closing the distance to the target. Data confirmed. Information is accurate, Airfarce says before cackling. "There goes their paint job, hehehe." "Woo!" Puke cheers loud enough to be heard through the comms. "We're done!" the Hat exclaims as he and the rest of the guys rush out of the canyon and start prepping their weapons to the sides of the canyon entrance. "It's go time! Reel that fish in!" Bike reports, and there's a gleeful cackle from Airfarce before the distance between the target and van drops like an anchor before suddenly widening. "Looky there! She wants to try the canyon trick again. Adorable!" Bike remarks as it all starts coming together. "Get ready, boys. On my mark, Itchy," he says as he stares intently at the numbers. The distance to the van is dropping like a bomb, but remains steady on its distance to the target van. The speeds are in the several hundreds of kilometers per hour through the tight, twisting canyon. A cheap, dirty trick that the criminals have used many times to shred pursuing vehicles. Going over just gave them time to slow down and stop in the treacherous terrain and do whatever they want with whoever they grabbed. Usually something completely horrible and psychotic. The magnetic fields of the world were heavy around here, so scanning equipment was all kinds of fucked, forcing people to rely on eyesight alone. And with how the canyon was, you had to be directly over the exact spot with the van to spot it, letting them hide despite everyone knowing where they were. Following them into the canyon was a death sentence, unless, of course, you were Airfarce who'd spent 2 days memorizing its layout in faster and faster run-throughs of the whole mess until he could pilot through it at twice the speed and not even scratch the paint. "Halfway through, Mortar, get ready," Airfarce warns him. "Steady!" Bike shouts, holding his arm up as the numbers drop. "Steady! There, 1/2 kilometer. Mark!" He throws down his arm and Itchy initiates the detonator. There's an ungodly bang, and the larger air van comes screaming out of the canyon, covered in flames and shedding shrapnel. Its anti-grav is completely wrecked as it slams into the ground and skids before tumbling over and rolling twice, before hitting the softer dirt and digging a deep furrow, then slamming into a large stone in a bone-jarring impact. "That's how you fucking do it! Woo!" Itchy screams out in joy, even as Airfarce and Puke swoop in on the team van. Bike turns off the power to the device and quickly hoists it onto his back through the shoulder straps before racing to jump into the side. Damn fine work, boys. Let's lock it down and get paid, Puke says from the front seat as the van takes off again and zooms in next to its downed prey. Kinda like a vulture that was too damn impatient for any of that circling nonsense. The door to the side of the target van jostled and jumped as the men rushed out of their own van with their weapons at the ready. Only Air Farce remains inside as he maneuvers it to poise above them all like a hawk waiting to swoop in and kill, albeit with a great deal more vehicular homicide than usual. The door slams open and a brown-haired rabbi collapses out. Her upper right arm and lower left are covered in tattoos. Mustard rushes over and points his automatic down into the hatch, even as the dazed pilot is dragged out by J3 and Dong. All four of her arms are cuffed, and she's set to the side. See this? This is a beacon. You get 100 meters from this, and boom! No more hands. Understand? Itchy threatens her as she blinks groggily at him. He snaps his fingers in her face and snorts. We got a concussion. First, maybe second degree. Rabbit bitch got rocked. Good to know. High-speed crashes may result in concussions. Got it. Mustard snarks out. Keep it professional, people. Pookie warns them as a brute arcana slowly crawls out. She's slapped in explosive cuffs while staring down the barrel of Pookie's new laser cannon, well aware it was the weapon that had been lighting up the van during the chase, and there was nothing to stop it from going clean through her if she played stupid games. The overly muscled conglomeration of spider and woman is sat down next to the dazed rabbis. See this? This is a beacon. Get more than 100 meters from it and boom, bye-bye hands and back. Get it? Itchy explains, holding up the small device. Got it, she says with 8 very wide eyes. Good. He says, then notices her gaze follows it. Don't even think about it. The beacon has its own safeguards. Any one of them goes off and it's boom time. Don't shoot, don't shoot. I surrender. I completely surrender. A Drin woman says, emerging next. She's hauled out and cuffed and cannon point. She has some cuts along her head, has blood pouring down from the base of her antenna, and she just sits down and shuts down next to the brute Arcana. Another injury here. The Nagasha can't move. That's the lot of them. Keep your gun on her. I'll call it in, Bike says as he pulls off a much more robust model of comm. From his thigh straps and tunes it to the local police. The report is clinical, to the point and emphasizing the need for containment and medical services. And bring the bounty for the multi-maimers in Prod N, he finishes before hanging up. Think asking for 800 discs is a bit unreasonable? Air Farce asks. They'll bring them in trade bars most likely. It's only 8 pieces at that point, is the reasonable response. Yeah, because that's not suspicious thing to ask for, the pilot mutters sarcastically. Shove a sock in it and keep these idiots in sight. I don't want this multi-armed maniacs pulling a fast one. Puke barks out, and the conversations stop. Minutes pass as the men glower at their captives while keeping their guns trained on them without fail. T-minus 2 minutes, Bike says, and the men adjust their grips on their weapons as their response. A small train of vehicles swoop in from above, and a small army of officers and paramedics rush out. There's a bit of an issue as the Maimer's vehicle is cut open to pull out the injured Nagasha without aggravating her injuries, as all 4 of the criminals are formally arrested and the statements of the bounty hunters are taken. There's a few minutes of annoyance as they slowly and carefully remove the explosive cuffs from the women before they're carted away, and an armored box with 8 Proton trade bars is left for them. All right, fun part's over. Time for cleanup, Puke says as everyone straps their heavier weapons and the case of trade bars into the modified van, which then flies back to the nearby canyon entrance. Pity we can't get a salvage claim on their van. That thing's fast and maneuverable for a brick its size. Bike notes as he jumps out to assist with the removal of the mortar turrets and generally picking up bits of shrapnel before some kid comes along and gets themselves gouged open on the sharp metal. We'll just have to console ourselves with the second small fortune we've earned in so many weeks. I know it's hard, boys, but we've only got a stupid amount of cash and the admiration of all our peers on the Dauntless. These are trying times for us poor neglected bounty hunters. The Hat says as he removes his headwear and holds it to his chest with a theatrical sniff. Motherfucker kept a straight face and everything. Mustard mutters loud enough to be heard, and the canyon is filled with good-natured chuckles. The cleanup is quick and efficient as they soon have a pile of used mortars to the side of the canyon entrance and are tying everything together for easy transportation. "We got company?" Airfarce says a few moments before an airbike with a massive Canador woman descends from the sky. Her pelt is jet black with yellow highlights, and her lips are naturally a bright red, signifying that she's ripe and ready, as if her massively overdeveloped proportions that she's barely bothering to hide in her tight leather biker outfit weren't hint enough. "Oh my. So you are the ones who just took in the multi-maimers? How did a bunch of little boys beat me to the bounty?" she asks as she sways over to the van. When active, the vehicle hovers at least a foot off the ground and is 5 feet from the bottom to the ceiling, giving it plenty of legroom even after accommodating for the half-foot of sheer mechanical and electrical work to keep the thing flying. Despite the technical specs keeping Airfarce at nearly 6 feet, she has to lean down to address him, then take a step back as all he can see is her massive side boob. He shakes his head and focuses himself before she gets a glimpse of him staring, but he most certainly did stare. "So how'd you do it? Tracker with sensor bafflers hooked up to the back of their van? Some Axiom projection to make them think they're being followed? Something else?" "Skill, lady. Skill," Airfarce states, and she softly snorts. "I'm sure it was very impressive, little man. Now really, how did you do it?" "Chase them through the canyon twice. The first time was to give them a proper scare. Second time to set them up into our trap." Airfarce explains, pointing to the cleanup finishing up around the canyon, then jerking his thumb back to the massive furrow the Maimer's van left. "See? Darling, I understand that you might to brag and seem to be the big man in front of me. But I understand if there was just some silly little trick. It's the simple and often silly things in life that are to be treasured," she says, reaching in to pat him on the head. She misses the slight twitch around his eye before a nasty grin crosses his face. "All right, miss?" He loses steam as he realizes that he has no idea what her name is. "And do tell me it's Miss and not Mrs." He flirts to not only get back into it, but throw her off too. Time to teach an alien some humility. "Onyx will do. And don't you worry either way. You're a delicate little tret that doesn't need to worry about the big bad Canador taking a bite. Too dainty." "I'm sure," Airfarce says. "Hey, Captain, mind if I show Miss Onyx here exactly how we did this?" Airfarce asks, and Pukey just quirks an eyebrow and nods. "Excellent. Climb on in and hold on tight. It's a bit of a ride," he offers before pressing a button to open the side door next to her. "Oh, this is adorable. I can't wait to see exactly how you did this," she says as she clambers in and crouches down with one hand on the back of each front row seat. "It's a simple enough trick," Airfarce says as the door closes and everyone gets out of the way to give him a clear run to the canyon. Somehow she still hasn't clued into the fact that something's up. Time to rock her world. "It goes a little something like this," he says, then slams the accelerator into the floor. Onyx lets out a shriek of shock as the world around them is reduced to a brownish tan blur. Now the difficult part is timing out everything and getting your reflexes right. I've actually cheated a little in that I'm flying a smaller vehicle than the Maimer's use," Airfarce says casually as Onyx screams in terror and her clawed fingers dig through the cushioning of the van to hold onto the frame and only the frame. Now beyond the tight walls without much forgiveness, we've got a few really tricky moments coming up. First is a spot where we have to take off and climb halfway up the canyon in order to get through a gap in the walls so that we don't shred the sides clean off our van. It's the one where most law enforcement and bounty hunters over the years have gotten themselves killed. Airfarce explains, looking back at her as she runs out of air to scream and just gapes at him in naked horror. "Are you trying to get us killed?" she stutters in fear. "Killed? Madam, I could fly this canyon in my sleep," Airfarce remarks. He hauls back on the controls and the van jumps further into the air and through a gap in the wall of leaning stones and then forces the stick forward again to all but dive the van to the ground and barely avoid a massive outcropping. "You're insane," she shrieks as a near miss causes her to try and jump, only to be painfully reminded that she's in a tiny van and has little if any room to maneuver. "Insane? Miss Onyx! I've flown this canyon at full speeds dozens of times. I practiced for days and days before today's run. But with these speeds, I know, kitty stuff, but the van doesn't go any faster without illegal modifications. Airfarce cuts her off. Oh, by the way, he continues looking back, we're coming up to another hard part, he says with a huge smile right before the canyon closes overhead and they're plunged into pitch-black shadows. This is the second point near the other end of the canyon that killed almost as many people as the wall from the other side, he says, not even bothering to look at where they're going. Watch the path, but we can't see dick. Not to mention the whole cave is full of refractive crystals. I turn the headlights on, and we go blind. He says A as he jerks the steering left, then right, to jink around some unseen hazard as Onyx whimpers in horror. Oh, relax, we're almost out, he says, and suddenly forces the van to take a brutally sharp right turn, and they blast into sunlight and out of the canyon. See? Oh, thank the goddess! Onyx mutters in relief as she lets go of the headrests and lets herself slump onto the floor. You are insane, little Tret. Human, Airfarce says. What? I'm human, not a Tret. Oh, that new species that arrived on Centris? Mostly men? The Dauntless is mostly full of men, but there are as many women as men. Of course, that means the girls just get so picky, most men are left out cold. Ah, well, time to go back to the rest of the gents. Airfarce rambles before flashing a nasty smile. He then accelerates back into the canyon. No! Onyx screams, and he scoffs openly before massively veering to the left to avoid slamming into a wall. You really need to relax back there. That kind of stress can tear years off your life. Learn to decompress, you know. You're fucking crazy! No, I'm just really damn good at what I do. Hear you like music? I like music. Let's put on some music, he says absently, fiddling with the controls. Ah, here's a good one, he says as strange instruments sound up. Oh ho ho ho, oh ho 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 ho. There's a repeat in the music, then a pause. Everybody was kung fu fighting, he translates as he sings. Those kicks were fast as lightning. He then turns around and holds up his hand with his fingers and thumb an inch apart to demonstrate the next part. In fact, it was a little bit frightening. But they fought with expert timing, he continues, all but dancing in his seat as they weave through the canyon at hellish speeds. They were funky Chinamen from a funky Chinatown. They were chopping them up. They were chopping them down. He mimes out, letting go of the controls in his excitement. Are you insane? What, you don't like funky music? Fine. Let's get something with more kick to it, he says, fiddling with the buttons, and strange halting music comes up. This has more kick to it? She almost says something before everything shifts. Man and machine and nothing there in between. A flying circus and a man from Prussia. Airfarce sings along as he shoots through the upper gap in the wall again and once more dives towards the ground to avoid the van being shredded by the merciless canyon. The sky and a plane. This man commands his domain. The Western Front all the way to Russia. A slight smell makes itself known in the van as she all but shrinks back against the rear hatch just before they veer away from outcroppings that she hadn't noticed due to screaming the first time through. Death from above, you're under fire! Stained red as blood, he's roaming higher! For the goddess's sake, stop! She screams in utter terror and flies forward as he stomps on the brake to plow into the back of both seats at once. The van drifts forward slowly and just barely out of the canyon as she catches her breath. So think you understand the trick now? Airfarce asks her, and she rises up to look him square in the eye. Or do you need another demonstration of skill? He asks as he lowers the van to the entrance of the canyon and gently touches down. She just pants a bit as her heart is clearly on the edge of a straight-up revolt, and his grin cranks up a notch. Not a very romantic soul, are you? Here I am taking you for a leisurely afternoon drive to exotic locations, serenading you with the songs of my people, and you hate every moment of it. He mocks her, and something in her seems to snap, and she looks him clear in the eye with something burning in hers. Are you strapped in? She asks him, and he shakes his head. Is that a no? It is a no. Good, she says, grabbing him by the shirt and hauling him into the back as she kisses him hard and all but rams her tongue down his throat. Pay up, Pookie says to J3 as the van starts rocking. Damn it! I was sure they'd open the door first. Get some fucking air in there. J3 grumps as he slaps a few discs into Pookie's hand. He's not the only one paying up a bet. Well, we're here for a bit. Grab some smokes, boys, the Hat says with a chuckle as he pulls out a pack.